One who's coming in. We're going to get started really soon. Um, just to let you all know, this will be recorded. And actually, I think we are recording right now. Our presenter is here, Mr. Kendrick Staley. And just a couple of housekeeping rules. You may ask a question at any time during the presentation. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A. You can ask a question in the Q&A box. If you have a comment, you may make a comment in the chat box. You will also have a raise your hand feature if you would like to speak and make a verbal comment. And I will unmute you and allow you to make your comment. And we're going to give it about 2 more minutes, let people trickle in, and we are going to get started. In the meantime, if you are ready to learn some information to take back to your organization, let's drop some 7s in the chat box. If you are ready to learn some information that you can take back to your organization, let's drop some 7s in the chat box. All right, I see you, Dr. Renee. All right, Kimberly. Okay, Reginald. All right, Bill. Oh, Bill got 4 7s. Okay, Andrew gave us a 7 with the question mark. Okay. Oh, Kate McGuire gave us, wait a minute, I'm too young to need glasses. I think she put 6 7s in the chat box. Okay, Jeff, I see you. Okay, Angela. We got 5 7s from Queen. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get this show on the roll. I am Shaquille Carbon. I work with communications with the Baltimore City Children and Youth Fund. And I have the distinguished pleasure of hosting Mr. Kendrick Staley here today, who's going to be talking to us about how to develop infrastructure for our organizations. Before we get started, just as a reminder, at the bottom of your screen, there's going to be a Q&A box. You may ask a question at any time, and I will let Kendrick know that he has a question that he needs to answer. And don't say, I have a question, because you can have 2. Also, if you want to make a comment, you can leave a comment in the chat box. And if you want to make a verbal comment, you can just raise your hand. And if the time allows, I will unmute you and allow you to make a verbal comment. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a part of a series of capacity building events sponsored by the Baltimore City Children and Youth Fund. We think that it is very important in this philanthropic ecosystem that we build up our organizations from the ground up. And so that's what this is about. We want everyone to be sustainable, and we want to make sure that good information is being shared at no cost for our organization, so that we can continue to do the good work of serving young people in our city. And so with that, I am going to introduce Mr. Staley. Mr. Staley, if you will, I just want you to give me that Black pastor in the pulpit look when somebody's reading their bio, just for the dramatic effect, okay? All right, so the presenter for this event is Mr. Kendrick Staley. People can't hear your round of applause, but I assure you they're giving you a round of applause. The business coordinator for the Baltimore Urban Leadership Foundation, also known as The Door. During his time with The Door, they have successfully transferred 10 properties from the Baltimore's Housing and Urban Development Office to their Project Lazarus program. He has also served in a volunteer role for the organization as the director of the Sports Matters program. When not working with The Door, he is developing an independent program, Front Office Sports Academy. Kendrick has served on a number of advisory boards in Baltimore and is a member of the Greater Baltimore Leadership Association. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Kendrick Staley. And Mr. Staley, if you please.
All right, Zach. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. How's everybody doing? Hope you're feeling good today. As Shaq went into, we're going to talk about sustainability and building a sustainable organization. We're going to deal with the infrastructure around that. I don't know. Let's see. You were on last time. We talked about a couple of potential opportunities or areas you may could look to expand beyond the traditional grant cycles and some of the other things. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about some specifics around what are some of the things that we can start to create for our organization and start to put in place. Um, Actions we can start to put in place that will help us be successful and where we're going and help us be efficient. Because if you're like most people trying to do good work, don't have extra resources. So the more efficient we can be, the more impactful we'll be able to be. More efficient and the better stewards we can be of the resources we do have, the more potential we'll have for growth and opportunity. So let's just get right into it. Like you said, you got Q&A, you got chat. I have a little bit question and answer too, but I'll go through my presentation. If you have questions, go ahead and ask them. You can put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll go from there. So we're looking at developing an infrastructure for success. And I'm talking about this applies to any business, no matter how large or small. So we're going to try to go over some regular, some universal principles because everybody's situation is different. So we'll always say that there's no cookie cutter answer to anything. Everybody's situation is different and it has to be looked at individually. But there's some things that we all have in common. So let's go ahead. So looking at the first, when we're trying to grow, um, when I talk to other groups I'm working with or in my advisory role, other things like that, we always try to come back to this, especially for passion-driven organizations and passion-driven people. We want to look at developing a growth mindset in our organization, moving from a personality-driven organization to a process-driven organization. And that's a lot of times that is the challenge for most small organizations. We bring our passion into the work and we're gung ho, and passion is a great catalyst and it can get things done and it can help us bootstrap when we don't have resources. Passion can get us through, but in order to grow, but passion is a poor leader as far as it's a growth process. So it's in order to grow our organization and do what we need to do, we need to move from personality driven to a process driven organization as much as possible. So that means number one. Number one, and this is just quick, we'll really get into the specifics. It's not about you. And so understanding that in your organization, especially founders, I've been found you take pride in your work and everything else, but if the organization is going to grow and sustain itself, it can't be just focused on you, your ability to work through the night, all of those things. You can't, and so that leads to number two. You can't be the CEO, chief everything officer. You're not going to grow if you do and be all things. And I know that's can be a challenge to decide what to do or what not to do. I understand that, but it's something that we have to continually think about and be vigilant about. And so the third one, and that growth requires a systems approach. And so once again, getting away from personality. So I'm gonna talk about organizations that I work with, organizations I've been a part of, and what we see. So we have a passionate leader. Um, Very passionate about it. They work really hard. But sometimes it takes a long time to get answers. Sometimes some things that could move faster don't move as fast. You can also have an organization if you've seen where a key individual or someone gets sick and then everything stops or everything slows down because it's not a systems approach. It's all about that person and that personality. And then now we can't get things moving until they get back into the office. and if they go on vacation, things fall apart, or because we're just always based on our personal drive and other things on it. So this is about how we move from that to another level. So the first thing, if we're going to be developing a, a, a process-driven organization, first thing we start with, it all starts with a strategic plan. And so I don't know how many organizations I've worked with or I've been on the board where I've said, let me see your 1 to 3 year plan, and they didn't have one. And so what I mean by that is nothing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a complicated, long planning process, but you have to know the who, what, when, where, how, and why of your business in order for us to start doing some of the other things. So let me read the statement. Strategic planning, let me put this and be clear, is the ongoing organizational process. Now, I put that in red and I put it in all caps because if you take nothing from this, this is the one thing that I want you to remember. As an organizational leader, not just a person with passion, because a person with passion can volunteer. We're going back again to people who are building organizations that can achieve outcomes and goals efficiently and effectively. So we're not talking about how we feel or anything about that. So it's an ongoing organizational process. That means we don't write the plan and then put it away and don't look at it again. It's an ongoing process that we use available knowledge to document our intended direction. We put down where we want to go. So this is again not saying that we necessarily get, but saying what we're trying to achieve. And then based on this, it allows us to prioritize our efforts. What should we spend time on? If you're a small business leader or organization, you're part of a nonprofit, I guarantee you don't have all the time in the world. I guarantee you have to make choices with your time and with your resources. So we have a plan. We're not trying to prioritize on the fly. We know where our priorities lie. When two opportunities come up, we know based on our strategic plan where our attention should be focused. Whether it's 70% here, 30% here. We know that it's important to be able to do these things quickly, especially like I said, we don't have large amount of money, extra money, or people or time. It effectively allocates our resources. It aligns our shareholders and our employees. And so in your standpoint, it would be stakeholders, not necessarily shareholders, but you have stakeholders. Your stakeholders are the people who invested in you. It's or the community that you actually serve is a stakeholder. And so it helps the organization and all the people that support it be on the same page. I know that's one of the things, if you're running the organization, you can't afford to have people not knowing what's going on. And I've seen it so many times. And especially when we're doing community-based work, we're often doing more with what we got than could be expected. And so we really have to be clear about being in alignment with each other and the people we work with and the people that we do, and it ensures those goals are backed by data. And so let me get into this really quick because I don't want you to spend, but like I said, doesn't have to be 50 pages, but a clear who, what, when, where, why, and how of what we do and what we're trying to accomplish has to be there. And the leaders of the organization and everybody has to be aligned with that. And that I won't spend because that's just an overview, but this is why. In order, once we have that plan or that concept and prop in mind, That allows us to move to the next step of developing our business processes and our operational procedures. So we take the strategy, what we want to accomplish. And now based on that and what we think what that strategy is, then we want to look at what processes, like I say, getting away from personality driven things. So it's not just, oh, the I got a newsletter that goes out the first of every month. Okay. Uh on the 27th, I'm gonna just put it together. That's not a process because what happens if you're sick that month? What happens if it's not an organization, it's all based on my personality, and so that is gonna be hard for me to grow. So now we have this plan, and so now we want to define our goals. Why are we developing this particular process? Why are we doing this particular thing? And let me get back to this. All of these things have to be specific to your organization and you. I know a lot of times people just do things that are there. So like, oh, I may post to Instagram 5 times a day. And then I ask, why do you do that? And they don't know because that's what everybody else does. And so I want every process that you create to drive back to a part of your plan or why you think what that creates. And then so now that we know why we create this process, and I'll go through a sample process at the end too. We want to plan and map what that process looks like in our organization. Once again, back to specifics. Not what it looks like for that organization, not what it looks like for this, what that looks like for our organization. And step number 3, based on that, we want to set our actions and assign stakeholders or assign people who's going to execute. And so, it's saying we mapped it out, we see where we want to go. Now we say what are the particular actions and who's responsible for those actions, what other resources and equipment do we need to create that action. Then we're going to go to step 4. We want to test the process. So before we talk about it, before we start making these wholesale changes or whatever, we want to test out our process of what we develop to see if that fits what we do and how we do it, and we're able to observe any gaps, we can make adjustments to that process. Then we're going to run that process a couple times, get feedback on it, monitor it, see what happens. If that process works, we'll be able to adapt that process to what we do. And now it can start to become a part of this, what we call SOP, a standard operating procedure, that allows us to say, this is how we do what we do related to this particular area. And then that also allows, that's why I said these are written too. So let me make that, because document means it's written. These are written because number one, like I said, if you're the leader or somebody gets a new job or somebody else, we want these processes to be able to come together quickly so that people coming on, they can take a look at the process or at least read it. So when they do have to meet with us, and not saying they don't get training, but we're offering them supplemental training. We're not taking away our limited time as leaders that we have going over every single little detail. So we've already made ourselves a more efficient organization. So we want to start documenting these things as we go along. So I would say that again, but this is a sample process. I'll put a sample process up here. It could work for your organization, and we'll go through some of the specifics of it. And like I said, if you have any questions, please ask me questions because I'm gonna move past the bid process. I'm gonna move to the next thing. But so this is a sample process for an organization that wants to know how do we decide to go after what we go after? Because one of the biggest things when we're talking about developing alternative revenue streams and concepts and other things for individuals, especially for small organizations, one of the most important things is the opportunities we don't pursue. So just because the opportunity is out there, we don't want to go after if it doesn't fit what we do. We can't do it efficiently. So this is an example. So let's say someone in the organization, and that's why I said sponsor. Someone in the organization hears of an opportunity to vote on something. Let's just say it's the youth fund. They see the youth fund proposal and they say, hey, this may be an opportunity for us. And so based on that, they get out that worksheet, and maybe on that worksheet, they create a point scale. And so maybe you get 5 points. You get 5 points if it's new and it doesn't have an incumbent. And so maybe if it doesn't have an incumbent, then there's a better chance that I can win it. This is not somebody already in there performing that job. So maybe I give that 5 points, and then maybe our minimum criteria is $3,000 per opportunity. So we realize that if the opportunity is not at least $3,000, it makes no sense for us to go after. And so in that criteria, I might assign between 3,000 and 100,000. I might give for 3,000, you get 1 point. For 100,000, you might give 5 points. And so this opportunity is 50,000. So it gets 2.5 points, let's say, on this scale. And then it may say, okay, how long is it until the bid is due? And you say, oh, well, if it's 30 days or more, you get this point. If it's 30 days or less, you get this many points. If it's 60 days or more, that means we got a longer time to look at it and really take our time to do what we need to do and make it more points. So let's say we look at this bid, we add it up. Now we have this potential opportunity out of our 20 possible points. Before it goes to the next level, it has to have at least 15. And so then out of that, we assign this track number, we add it to a bid tracking system, and the bid is reviewed. If it's approved, it's assigned a tracking number. And if the project lead and then once it's assigned a track number, it goes into our system, we start the work. And so I'm gonna quickly go into how this helps you as an organizational leader in a couple of ways. So like just with number one, you would know that 1 and 2, if I'm the president or other person, I would know that people aren't wasting my time bringing me things that don't at least meet my minimum criteria. So I've already created a more efficient organization just from those two. And then this also gives us a way to track how effective we are of identifying opportunities. So let's say I have 20 opportunities that go through my bid tracking system, and out of 2019 was given a no-go rating from the president and development director. Already with this data I captured, I already know that I need to go back and refine my process. That process is not getting me success. And so these are all things how we build the infrastructure into the system that supports where we're getting ready to go. So I'm going to move on from the process real quick. Any questions related to that, or I can go to what happens once we kind of figure out what we want to do, our actions, and how that goes.
Yes, we do have one question, Kendrick. The
Okay.
question reads, how important is it to draft a sustainability plan in your grant request?
I would say in your grant request, I would say it's specific to the grant and specific to the grant, what the grant and grantee is asking for. So I can say, but I would say it's very important to have a sustainability plan and strategic plan, whatever, for your organization, because if you go ahead and write your sustainability plan out and have that ready, then if the grant request asks for it, you already have it available. It's also would guide your actions and other things going forward. It will also will help you make decisions on what we spend resources on, what we don't spend resources on, what opportunities we pursue, whether we pivot or not, or anything like that. So I can't speak to particular grants because every grant, every opportunity, every bid, everything that people are asking for is going to be specific to what they are. And usually most grants and other proposals and other things have weights that say what different weights are for different criteria. So some groups, like if I'm just going to fund this one time and never see you again, it may not be as important what your sustainability plan is. But if I'm going to continue to be, make a multi-year commitment, it may be important for me to understand what your sustainability plan is. So like I said, I wouldn't say specific to each grant, but I think it's an important document or at least an important understanding to have for your organization, period. And if that aspect comes up in a grant proposal, it'll be ready for you. Hopefully that answers the question. So we're going to move on from this process real quick. And we're going to talk about, now that we have these processes in place, how do we see that we're being efficient, or how do we, and that's this concept, we can call it different names, but it's basically the same thing. But there were these KPIs, these key performance indicators, and it's something that is a measurable way for me to see how effectively I'm achieving my objective. So, and a performance indicator could be monthly website traffic, and that could be for your business. And if I get at least, a 1,000 visits a month, then we know that usually leads to XYZ conversion for us. Or it could be blog articles published this month. We know that we publish at least 4 blogs every month about the work that we do. We know that we increase people's understanding of us by 3% or whatever. Or your customer satisfaction scores, maybe you do surveys for parents or other things after that. And then based on those scores, we see that based on those scores, when we hit these numbers or when we go above this number, when we go below this number, our ability to win contracts or win opportunities declines. And that's why I want to say general, because for each organization, what are the important goals for your organization to hit and to achieve are different. But everybody has to measure something. We make what we measure is a kind of known understanding that also another deals with KPIs, but also deals with planning and KPIs. And we talk about plans are useless, planning is essential or indispensable. I think it said White House. So that gets to this constant reevaluation of what we've done, what those outcomes are, how can we refine those to improve those. So once again, looking at the system, we got the plan, we got an overarching plan that says what we're trying to accomplish. Then we have these processes. These are the processes and procedures that we're going to use to achieve those goals. And then on the third level, these are the measures that will tell us whether or not these processes are being effective, whether or not these processes. So like if I say KPI, if I go back to what we talked about in the process here, efficient bid process. That's a process. My KPI for that could be proposals submitted per quarter. And so I know when I run an efficient bid review process, I'm able to submit at least 4 quality proposals per quarter. And so that's how you match the plan to the process to the performance indicator. So remember, none of these are separate. One feeds down from the other. So I have this where I want to go. This is how I intend to do it. This is how I check and measure whether that's been successful or not. Like I said, for each organization, I want y'all to take these concepts and kind of see how it fits into your organization and how they can set up what you really do. Because like I said, it's individual. These are general concepts with them. Now I have a way and I'm gonna move on kind of from the tracking and measuring standpoint. Let's got some questions. We're going to talk a little bit more about some marketing must-haves that I believe in. So I'm gonna go ahead and move to this next one here. We good, Shaq? All right.
There was one question.
All right.
It is a yes or no, really quickly. Are you going to talk about the importance of creating an endowment?
What?
Will you cover creation of endowments?
Creation of endowments. hmm I can give you a quick overview of that.
Okay. Well, if you want, you can continue with your presentation, and I'll remind you as you're kind of squaring things away.
Okay. So talk about these marketing must-haves. Every organization, I think, should have something similar. Because of course, again, we're talking about developing alternative revenue streams, and so that means potentially meeting other people outside of the traditional grant making process, different customers, agencies, government agencies, other potential things. And so one of the things that I want to talk about quickly is a capability statement. It's a concise document of your business competencies. Think of it as your business resume, helps provide specific information that will convince customers to do business with you. So I'm gonna go out here real quick and show an example here. I just pulled up off of the internet real quick. I just put in capability statement and this came up. And so this is for an organization, a nonprofit, and you see it got clearly here, quickly your core mission. There's some of its major accomplishments here. Precise, of course, they've probably done more. A list of awards. And then this is an important thing for most people if you're talking about sustainability or growing or people wanting to know that you're an organization that understands what you're doing with your dollar and that I can trust you and other things like that. A quick summary of overall snapshot of what your budget is and how you handle that. Because if I'm a leader, it gives me a quick idea of whether or not I want to move forward to investigate further or other things like that about becoming a customer or being in business with you. So this quick snapshot of what that is, your previous experience, and just some other highlights about this, about what you've done and what you do here. I've seen so many organizations, especially now with time is sensitive and people don't have a lot of time. If you can, and I'm a decision maker, I want something quick in my hands that I can look at real quick, get to the highlighted information that I want that allows me to say, I'll look further into this or this doesn't meet what I need. If I can't get there quickly and get this understanding, then it may be potentially not able to work with you or other things like that. And so every organization, nonprofit, for-profit, whoever you are, an organizational capability statement, usually one page is better, front or back, you know. But sometimes like this one, this is 4 pages, but that's traditionally going to be a fold over. So I'm still not carrying a lot of papers around, or not even carrying these days. Most leaders will ask you to email it. So I'm not reading 80 pages of documents. I'm getting really concisely to what I want to get to. And that's so all organizations I would say you can look it up. Um, Health and Human Services website has a great tutorial on how to create your capability statement. This one is missing, like we talk about your NAICS codes and other things that you're a part of, or other areas that you're here. That's not on this one, but that's something else you want to think about. But like I said, every organization is different, in what you're trying to achieve. So look up similar capability statements, maybe in your industry, especially organizational leaders, and you can kind of get an idea of what yours should sound like. Um, so we go back to our marketing must-haves. Uh, the capability statement is one, and I'll show you an example of that. Another thing is, I think, and like I said, I'm not a good example because we're working on mines at the same time, but everybody should have one of these two. That other marketing things, I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list. This is just the list that I think you can't do without in this, in how we do, and then uh, all your business cards, promotional materials, other, that's going to be, like I said, look at individually for your organization, which you can afford, which you can't. But these are the things I think you have to have. And so, capability statement, the second one is this website. And this one is website, clearly defining what you do on your homepage and how you do it. If I'm a potential customer, government agency, whatever, I want to clearly see what you do right there. I want to grasp that information quickly, and how we do it. Your value proposition and your differentiation factors. So, especially around youth development or any community stuff, there are a lot of people doing a lot of the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? There are a lot of email organizations that do community work that have similar links. And so it's like, what makes you different? It's like, we're community mediators, and that's fine. There are a lot of community mediators. And so, how do we clearly define why our organization should be funded, why you should spend money with us, why I should do X, Y, and Z? So, that differentiation about what you do and other people do, I want that quickly to be able to find that. Some validation or some social proof if you have it. If you have a new organization, you may not have a lot of that. And so your validation or your social proof is going to have to be you or your character or either other things you've been involved in or other things that are going to be able to say why you're going to be successful. And so I'll give an example. When I started Front Office Sports Academy, XYZ, I I didn't have any necessarily past performance because that's where your validation social proof is going to be if you have a new organization. But I had my other board things that I was part of. I did a Warnock Foundation pitch competition. I was able to win one of the winners to that, and I did a fellowship. But and I was able to put those early when I first started my concept to be able to get some initial support before I had even actually accomplished anything with the youth that I'm working with now. And so remix that. Maybe you don't have a long history, but maybe you have you were voted most likely to succeed in high school and won the governor's community service award, you X, Y, and Z or whatever. And so that shows your ability. And so this is number 4, can't skip this. You need average, at least, or faster page load speed times. And so that means if I'm a decision maker, I'm not going to be spending all day waiting for your website to load. And so how much video you use, all of that stuff, you got to consider that for your audience. Number 5, customer stage specific content. So that early stage buyers who don't know nothing about you. And then there's some people that may be a little bit more familiar. And then there's some organizations or individuals that may be ready to pull the trigger already and work with you. But you need information for all of those levels of potential people that might visit your site. And I also say customers, because let's say you're a youth service organization. And let's say one of your customers is a private school and one of your customers is a public school. Your public schools and private schools are going to have different challenges. Private school may have more resources, but less credibility or less relationship with the community. And so they want to use you to develop inroads into that community. And maybe money isn't an issue for them. So talking about how you're the cheapest may not be the thing that drives them. But then you also may have a public school potential customer. And so for them, cost would be important. And so you would want to highlight the efficiencies and other things like that. And so, like I said, considering every person that may potentially come to your website or whatever, this is what you want to consider. Then number 6, we have mobile friendly design. Everybody's on their phone, iPads, other things like that today. If you're going to be spending limited resources, of course, we have limited resources. I decide where we're going to put our efforts. Instead of printing out an expensive glossy color brochure, I may put that money into a web designer that I say, hey, develop me a sales-friendly or mobile-friendly site, because that's what people use today. Paper, reducing your carbon footprint, all of that stuff. So those 2 things, of course, there's way more, and I'm not saying that it's not, but I think these are the absolute crucial things that you have to have to win a capability statement that clearly defines what we do, how we do it, some highlights and a quick financial snapshot of what we do and why we're successful. And then this website that people are able to go to and see some other things. Like I said, and I'm not saying social media can't be important. I'm not saying, but I'm saying everybody doesn't necessarily need that, or will it work for it? I think everybody has to have a website in today's market. Everybody has to have a capabilities. So let's look at pricing real quick as we talk about pricing and how you price what you do and how we do. So I put these 2 examples up here because, as you can see, pricing probably has very little to do with cost. The cost of production. Most people think pricing has to do with that, but it's not necessarily. So you see here, you have an Adidas flip-flop and you have a Gucci flip-flop, all rubber injection molded. Probably not much difference in the quality of the material. So this is going to retail. The Adidas one is probably going to retail for about $30 to $40. This one can retail from anywhere from $250 to $300 or maybe more, and the cost is probably negligible between the 2 and making. And so what we say about that is how we price it may not have little to do with the actual cause and actually how much people value the product or the service they're buying. And I said that for example because this and just typically going into some types of price. I mean, got cost plus pricing and there more, but that's simply taking what your total costs are and then adding a markup, let's say 30%. So we know it costs us $5,000 in salary and everything to run our weekly camp, and we want 30+%. So, we got to make 6,500 a week in the camp in order to hit our our markup. One way. And we have competitive pricing. That's another way to do it, where you look at people that offer the same services you offer, and you set your pricing based on that. And like I said, that can be a race to the bottom, especially when we start competing and cost cutting each other and other things like that. But these are some examples. And then that's why I think I like the value-based pricing, but like I said, that goes back to having your documentation and everything together. But that's really looking at your product, and I think it leads to potentially higher margins, yields, and other things like that. And that's really trying to break down your customer and understand the value that they place on the product and kind of what what potentially there is to make and what they think it's worth. Because if they think it's worth, let's say it costs us $100, but to them it's worth 1,000. Um, there's no need not to charge that, especially if that's within the scope of what is average for your community or your price. So as I said, these are types of pricing to look at that. But that finally goes into this last phase. I got my plan, I got my processes, I got my KPIs, I got my pricing together. So the last thing is developing a successful pitch. And this is, of course, like I said, this is generic. It could be a proposal, it could be a face-to-face pitch, it could be whatever it is, anything outside of the grant. I'm not necessarily talking about the grant. But a lot of the same things are there. So there's a lot of these same things over again, but it's how we present it for each potential customer. So with a successful pitch or a successful proposal is going to clearly define the problem and your specific solution to it, not a general solution, which your specific solution is. Um, if you're creating a pitch, a proposal, or even a strategy, whatever you want to call it, you have to know the target market. So let's go back to that example of the public school and the private school. I said you have to understand what the different challenges are for those. A school that operates in an urban environment versus one that operates in a rural environment. So understanding your target market to be able to customize what you do to them and how they do. Understanding of your potential competition, potential collaborators, because I don't think we should view everything only from a competition standpoint, but also my potential collaborators, who I could work with to achieve this, who may have similar goals as me, who might I work together with. So let's say if you had a youth organization that was into health and fitness, and let's say you didn't have um, and you wanted to partner with someone who was into mindfulness or yoga. And so together, y'all could collaborate and create a holistic type of fitness thing where maybe your organization focuses on nutrition and then they focus on mindfulness. So who are these potential collaborators that I could work with to expand what I'm doing? And my current and trending business environment. What is going on around me? What may I be able to anticipate? What how can I best set myself up for success? Um, you want to describe your team or the people you work with, their skills and accomplishments. Like I said, once again, let me know why I think this should be successful. We go back to this financial summary again. That's a challenge for a lot of organizations, but we want a financial summary of our current status and this project or whatever, and what we think that's gonna, how we think that's gonna fit or support our long term sustainability and things like that. And then, of course, pitch. Of course, we go back to different stages of the pitch or whatever. Show some traction with some milestones. So, um, maybe you didn't get the contract yet, but maybe you've been pre-approved as a vendor, or maybe you've had your background check complete, and so now that's another thing not on the list. Maybe so show where you are in your process and other things like that as you create um, your pitch, proposal, your concept, um, kind of whatever that is. And like I said, they can change. Everything changes. Every individual wants a different thing. Present it in a different way. I won't say they want a different thing, because everybody basically wants the same thing: who, what, when, where, why, and how. But they want to present it in different ways. And so, as it relates to infrastructure and creating a successful pitch, that was my presentation. But I'm going to talk about the endowment real quick, because I've had some experience creating some of that with a number of organizations. Uh, so I think endowment is similar to a successful pitch for a proposal, and I will move, you know, uh, maybe not number one, clearly define your, well, no, you have to clearly define your problem and your solution. But what I'm saying is I'm creating an endowment. Number one, um, number two is most important, knowing who my target is. So in creating endowments, if you're talking about endowments from high net worth individuals, from estates or other things like that, that's a very good thing, but it requires developing a personal relationship with your target market or your target group or individuals or other things like that, and understanding that um, organized money or collective money always has suitors. So if you have to really see, what is my relationship to this individual? How can I develop a relationship with this individual? What things are important to them? Um, and things like that. You have to clearly define, and working with the organization, a lot of that's going to be driven by the people you work with. You're going to have to negotiate the terms of that. What is the money used for? What can it be used for? What can it not be used for? What happens if you dissolve the organization? Who's in charge? Who's liable? And so, really, that's all about developing this relationship with that individual and or group of individuals, and figuring out what that is. Understanding, having this financial summary, of course, is going to be very important for an endowment. So and the strategic plan goes into place. What am I endowing? Um, and why? And so that goes back to your planning processes all over again, no matter whether it's an endowment or a renewable contract or whatever it is. It's going to be some of the same things. What traction? What past performance have you had? Other things like that. So But I would always definitely focus most of my attention on number one. Someone is going to have to support this individual or these individuals or this group, going to have to develop a relationship, a rapport, and a certain comfort level. And I would say the most important thing around that endowment piece is you have to factor in it's an ongoing and active pursuit. Um, and it might take years because you don't know unless the person says just put out a notice that says I'm ready to endow something. Um, you don't know a lot of it's going to be based on a state or if somebody sells their company or other things like that, when they have large amounts of money available, so you don't necessarily know the timing of that, and so that means that that's um, an ongoing uh, activity. If it's going to be a part of your strategy, and if that's a part of your marketing strategy, then that's great. And then you might look at your strategy and say, maybe you have a whole lot of high net individuals or people who have relationships with them on your board. And so that could make it easier to look at. And maybe you don't. And then maybe you say, okay, maybe for us, our time is best spent maybe not necessarily pursuing them because, that is more, I didn't say it's only that, but it's definitely more relationship driven than maybe some of the other opportunities. And hopefully I answered the question on your question related to endowments, but if you have a more specific question, I'd be glad to kind of answer that as well.
Hey, Kendrick, so there was a question earlier about the capability statement. If you
Uh-huh.
don't mind going back to it, the question reads, if you are just starting out and don't know how to create a capability statement and not a lot of money for financials, how would you start to create such a statement?
If I was just starting out, I would probably go back to my strategic plan. And so let's just look at this real quick. This first sentence or this first paragraph, and really what you're trying to achieve, you want to figure that out. And so where it says my XYZ organization is formed to provide quality youth services. And then you can say our primary service area includes, and so we're always going to talk as if it's already happened. Our primary service area is East Baltimore and the zip codes of XYZ. And then, and so just really getting down, not making up any lies, but just getting really clear about what you want to accomplish and why you should be a person for that. So, like I said, if you don't have a lot of past performance as an organization, then you would talk more about your team. And so your organizational capability statement, unlike this one, lists all its thousands of employees and all of this, yours would talk more about the capability of the team or the individual, and not just them, the capability of their network. And so that's one thing. Your awards might be different. It might not be organizational awards, it might be personal. Or it could be skills you develop or capabilities or other things like that. But then getting down to this financial, how I would start, and my undergrads in finance, and that's a lot of what I do, but it's one of the areas that I really want to focus on, and I think small organizations to focus on because I think that's where you lose opportunity to show your sophistication. But I think where would I start is a realistic who, what, when, where, why, and how on my spreadsheet. And and that gets back to my processes and everything else. And so, from what I mean is that you really gotta know. Let's just say, because a lot of people don't know. Let's just say it takes 10 hours to create the newsletter. And so let's just say you're the one that's creating the newsletter, and I don't know. Let's say you value your time at $30 an hour. And so that if I do that times 10 every month, that's X, Y, 3,000 operating expenses for the newsletter. And every month we do X, Y, Z amount of snacks. And so then I really need to know what the potential cost of the snacks is. So that's why I go back to understanding your plan and being more specific about the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Because if I'm creating this projection, like it's a projection, so I'm saying I'm going to serve 50 kids a week and 5 days a week, and they need a snack and they need what's called it. Instead, even if I'm getting it donated, I'm still counting this. But let's say I got 50 kids, 5 days a week, so that's 250 meals. Let's say it's $2 a kid per day. That's 500 weekly operating expense. So that would go in this line, supplies and services. And then you really just have to break down what you're doing or what you propose to do, line by line, action by action, and really get a real snapshot of what that cost is. And I'm not gonna lie to you, that can be tedious at times, but it's gonna make your life so much easier. And when you go and when you're ready to talk about, it'll show your sophistication as an organization. It also shows that you put some thought into this, and it also shows that it's something that you're concerned about being an organizational leader, not just a passionate person who doesn't want to deal with the numbers. And that's the biggest thing that I've found people having challenges with, especially passion-driven people, is that they don't want to sit down and break these numbers down. When I say I'm gonna give 80 kids after school homework enrichment help and improve at test scores by 2%, every skittle, every pencil, every hour spent on the newsletter, every hour spent calling parents, every hour spent prospecting. We have to kind of tabulate that stuff and get a good grasp on that. And so that's where I would start, really breaking down every single action and operation or activity I plan to do, and start to put some costs in place, and really see what that is, and then kind of get there. You play with those numbers. It's a lot of it is more of an art than it is science. There's some science to it, like, yeah, you add this to this and subtract it from that, it equals that. But you really have to look at your individual organization, what you're trying to achieve, and really break these things down, these salaries and benefits. A lot of people are not counting the potential cost of like unemployment insurance or X, Y, and Z. A lot of people, especially leaders who use their own cell phones and stuff, they're not counting the cost of potential phone bills and other things. But if I'm creating this organization where one day you're not, it's not your personal phone, and I really need to understand what my real costs are. And so I would say just break that down. Um, every everything you use every week. What are these inputs, these materials, and start putting them in a paper and a spreadsheet. If you know spreadsheets, if you don't know spreadsheets, then you just write them down on a notebook paper, and go through the process. Hopefully That's where I would start.
All right. So Adam put in the chat, and I just want to remind people that there is a Survey Monkey. We want to make sure that we continue to deliver you all great programming. So just as a reminder, please remember to fill out the Survey Monkey, and the link is in the group chat. And if persons have any other questions, or if you would like to make a comment, please feel free to raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, or place your question in the Q&A box section. Other than that, you're doing pretty good, Kendrick?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
So that was kind of the end of my I guess prepared presentation. If there's, any specific questions or anything people want me to go over in a little bit more detail, I'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put a 9 in the chat. If you learned something new today, if you learned just one thing that you did not know before, please drop a 9 in the chat.
I thank for everybody for staying around for this time. And I said, definitely wish you all the best in his endeavors to make Baltimore a better place. Really, we all a hands on deck approach, all hands on deck approach.
Absolutely. And the chat is blowing up with 9. So, okay, we got a lot of people who at least learned one new thing today, which is great.
Like to hear that. But I said, if there's any specific questions, we still have a few more minutes. So,
hey Kendrick, can you for folks who want to get in contact with you mind putting up your contact information on the screen so people can follow up with you if they want to get more information about what you presented tonight?
Okay, sure. Let me put that.
And you have you have one comment. I really appreciate the experience. Good job. And then there's a question. Do you have any need for yoga for your sports academy? We out here networking today.
I do want to talk to you about that. So, yeah, I'm actually in the process of, I'm a personal trainer, so that's why I got a functional trainer, but I'm actually in the process of getting my certification in yoga as well. Almost complete my 200 hours, about 190 in. I would love to network, and I would love to see how we could potentially partner with what we're doing. I would say my organization is going through some change because originally we were going to be a nonprofit, and I was physically sponsored by my organization, and but we decided a year and a half ago, some that we would move forward without grant money and really bootstrap that. So I'm actually developing some things, and so this would be a good time to even chat with people about with some potential partnership opportunities with other things like that. So we incorporated as a C corporation last year to kind of focus on the self-sustaining aspect of what we were trying to do. I don't know if that's still up there, but that's my contact information. I need to go put my coming soon sign on the website. And try to sustain if people, that's kind of our overarching thing as it relates to just holistic living in communities. We started off as looking at childhood obesity, and that's how Front Office Sports Academy started, but it's grown to include front office fitness group, which was families, and then now we're looking at whole holistic thing around the concept of thriving sustainably. So that's what that is. Don't go look at my website yet, but that's my email, and I appreciate everybody's opportunity. That's my phone number too. And hopefully in the next 15 to 30 days, you'll hear a lot more about what we're doing. You know, I appreciate everybody, but definitely would love to connect. Trying to see where my chat window.
So just want to remind folks, before we get off, if you're still one of the folks that are still watching this webinar and participating tonight, first of all, thank you. But also we want to make sure that you fill out that post-event survey. We want to make sure that the program we're providing here at the U Fund is helpful and that you liked it and that you want to see more of it. So please fill out the survey. The survey link is in the chat box. If you have not, if you're still watching right now, please highly encourage you to go click that link and go fill out the survey. We want to make sure we can gather that information. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Yes, tonight's slides will be shared. I said I can send them to Adam. Somebody told me before about putting them in the chat. I'm not that technically but I'll try. So let me see how this works. So maybe I can just send it to Adam and he can put it on. But I did download it as a PDF. I don't know if I can put it on there. Do that.
Yep, that's fine.
All right. So I'll send it to Adam, and anybody who wants to, they can just reach out to him and get it from there.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you to everyone on behalf of the Baltimore City Children and Youth Fund for joining us. We look forward to hearing your responses from the Survey Monkey. And until next time, everyone be well. And we hope to see you at our next event, April 27th. Save the date. Don't forget, people, April 27th. You'll be seeing an email coming from me. And we hope to see you there. And with that, a good night. And everyone have a blessed and safe week.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. I appreciate y'all. And y'all keep working hard out there doing a job that can be thankless at times. But imagine what would be happening if you did do it. So thank you. Thank you so much.